Hi YouTubers. Today I'd like to talk about embouchure, and with that I want to introduce an exercise that I use, or a concept that I use. Is called the one note theory, and it applies to embouchure. Now the main thing about the one note theory is this. Well, let me start out. I always ask my students this, and it's a trick question. So I always tell them that it's a trick question, so they get them to think not just in conventional terms. How many notes are there in the saxophone? Tell me. Now, if you say 17, 34, or a lot, or something like that, I'd say all those answers, even though they might be justified, they're wrong. So what I'm looking for is that there's only one note on the saxophone. And what it is, that note is the note C, your middle C. Now, bear with me for a minute when I want to get on about this. This middle note C is a note that you can play on the saxophone without actually even thinking about it. You know, you don't have to prepare yourself, especially for a high note or a low note, to do anything special. You know, if you played saxophone for quite some time, even for a couple of weeks, you could play this middle C quite easily. Now, the thing I want to introduce here is that what I learned from one of my favorite teachers that I've had was the Honorable Dr. Joe Allard, and he taught a method of actually there's only one embouchure you need for the whole range of the saxophone. You don't need to drop the jaw to play the lower notes. You don't need to pinch in the throat to play the higher notes. It's just not necessary. In fact, not only is it not necessary, but you wind up actually hindering your own progress on playing the saxophone. You'll wind up curtailing your own possibilities of what you could actually do with the instrument. Now, I know there are plenty of books on saxophone playing out there, and especially one classic book of The Art of Saxophone Playing by Larry Teal, where he describes in a very scholastic way about, with diagrams and the muscles around in the face around the embouchure, and he compares the embouchure to a drawstring bag like this one, that wraps around the mouthpiece, applying equal pressure all around the mouthpiece, which is, I have to say, is absolute nonsense. From this apparatus that you have, between your mouthpiece, the reed, and the ligature. Now, hopefully your embouchure does not come in contact with the ligature, but your embouchure comes in contact with the reed and the mouthpiece. Which of these two bodies will actually move? The reed. The mouthpiece will not move at all. So why in the world would you ever apply pressure to the mouthpiece? No. So that's why this drawstring bag concept is not only silly, but at the end of it, what it'll do, you'll wind up curving the vibration of your reed, which actually will again damage your progress or damage your possibilities on actually what you could actually do with the instrument. So here the thing is, now, why is dropping the jaw such a terrible idea? I'll have to say that in order to get a note out of the saxophone, you have to apply a certain amount of pressure to the reed to get the reed to vibrate. And of course, your lower jaw is the only part of the apparatus of your head that moves. So your jaw will support the reed. And you, of course, with the right air pressure, your reed will vibrate. Fine and good. Now, if you're playing the low notes and you start opening your jaw, that means you're actually taking away the support of your jaw from the reed. And then what will happen? More than likely, if you take it away far enough, you'll actually lose that note. The reed will stop vibrating. And not only that, and if you do keep the tone, more than likely you'll wind up playing subtone, which is really an effect, and it's not the core tone of saxophone. Now, if you haven't heard of a core tone, maybe you should really look into it, because if you can play the saxophone using the core tone most of the time, then, or at least learning how to play core tone on the saxophone, then you'll be able to play any other effect you want to do with the saxophone quite easily. But if you only learn the effect first, like subtone, and then you try to learn core tone, well then core tone is going to be quite difficult for you depending on how long you've been playing subtone. Now, for the high notes, the idea that you have to pinch in your throat to play the high notes, again, this is like, to do that, it's like, you're trying to talk to someone and they got their hand around your neck and you're trying to talk. That's exactly what your high notes will sound like. And a lot of people avoid practicing high notes because of that, because, oh, they sound so thin and they're out of tune and blah, blah, blah. Well, you're doing it to yourself, I look at it that way. And so Joe Allard would say saxophone playing should be just as easy as speaking itself. Now think about when you talk to your friends, when you speak to anyone, you're not dropping your jaw and start talking like this, and you're not straining up here, not unless you're telling a joke or something like that. But if you're having a normal conversation with somebody, you're not manipulating your mouth in such abnormal ways in order to say the words you need to say. You're not going to do that. So why should you do that with the saxophone? Unless you're really going for a certain effect. If you're just trying to play the saxophone as it is, you don't need to do these things. And so the one note exercise does help you train to do exactly that. There are a few exercises on it. We're first dealing with the octaves, and the main thing you want to do is just try to let the saxophone do its work. What do I mean by that? The saxophone is a machine, play very plain and simple. You blow air into it, you press the right combination of keys, you should get that tone what you desire to have. Simple as that. It doesn't get any more complicated than that. But if it doesn't happen, that means you're doing something that you're getting in the way of the work of the saxophone that is actually designed to do for you. Like playing an octave, all you should be able to do is just press the octave key and you got the octave. If you're practicing the octave key and tightening your embouchure, then it's overkill. Then you might as well just take off the octave key and just start the whole close and do all the work yourself. Who would want to do that? No one. I don't think so. So get out of the way. Get out of the way. And if you're going to keep dropping your jaw for the low notes, same thing. Same thing. I mean, you don't want to. Get rid of. Then you might as well just get rid of playing all your notes below D, and because then you're only going to have, or even before then, some people have trouble even playing a low F, and getting it down there. So main thing is get out of the way. Get out of the way of the saxophone. And once you learn to do that, you realize how much more you'll be able to do. I'll demonstrate a couple of things right now. Now, I hope you were able to see that I was able to perform octave jumps without having to tongue the notes. I was able to get the tones I need, and also get the intonation actually quite well without having to manipulate extra from the embouchure. And even when I'm letting the tone drop an octave, I'm not pulling the tone down, I'm just letting it fall, And so this is maybe just first part one. I'll say this, this is just first part one of what I like to say about embouchure just with this exercise, because a couple of more exercises that one could do in order to improve the embouchure and get the saxophone to do exactly that, what you wanted to do, and even possibly do things that seem to make no sense, but you could still perform it on the saxophone. So in any case, please comment, subscribe, press that alert button, and so that you'll get your notification button, so then you get notified by every new video that I have coming out. And this is Evan Tate signing off. See you soon.